I organized my mother-in-law's birthday party, and she publicly declared that I was not part of the family. Now her son will finally learn the truth about his manipulative family. Growing up as the awkward marine biology nerd who preferred titipools to people prepared me for isolation, but nothing could have prepared me for the specialized form of rejection that comes from your husband's family. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags from that first Thanksgiving at Lucas's family home in Santa Barbara, with its perfect ocean view that none of them actually appreciated. The way his mother Janet looked me up and down like I was a specimen under one of my microscopes. The slight grimace when I enthusiastically talked about my research on coastal ecosystem rehabilitation. The immediate pivot to asking her brilliant boy about his business deals instead. But I was so damn in love with Lucas, 32M, that I convinced myself it was just normal new girlfriend jitters. He was different from any guy I dated, successful but humble, passionate about environmental protection through his consulting business, and he actually listened when I rambled about algae formations for hours. Plus, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at me. God, I'm still such a sucker for that smile, even after everything. What I didn't know then was that brilliant boy was actually their meal ticket. When Lucas's father died unexpectedly 8 years ago, Lucas had stepped up, dropping out of his PhD program to take over the failing family business. Not only did he turn it around, but he transformed it into a thriving environmental consultancy that basically kept his mom's lavish lifestyle afloat, paid for his sister's failed business ventures, and supported his cousin Christy, 22F, through her perpetual finding herself phase that somehow required designer clothes and weekend trips to Palm Springs. So when Janet's 65th birthday approached last fall, I had this stupidly optimistic idea that organizing an amazing celebration might finally make her see me as worthy of her son. I'm such an idiot sometimes. Now, I'm not usually the party planning type. I'd rather catalog seaweed samples than choose between eggshell or cream invitations, but damn it, I was determined. I spent weeks organizing a sunset yacht cruise with ocean conservation themes, combining her love of luxury with what I naively thought could be a bridge to my world. I found rare vintage photographs of Santa Barbara's coastline from the Historical Society to decorate the cabin. I hired her favorite chef. I even arranged for dolphins to be tracked so we could potentially see them during the cruise. Okay, that was partly for my own enjoyment, but still. Lucas thought I was crazy for trying so hard. "Babe, my mom's never going to change," he'd say, kissing the top of my head while I stayed up late addressing invitations. "She's just like this with everyone." But I'd seen how she was with their family friend's daughter-in-law, all hugs and sweetie this and darling that. The difference was painfully obvious. The really stupid part? I spent almost our entire vacation fund on this party. $5,800 that could have gone to our planned Galapagos trip, somewhere I'd dreamed of researching since I was 10. But apparently I'd decided that Janet's approval was worth more than swimming with marine iguanas. If I could go back in time and slap myself, I would. Christy offered to help with the planning, which turned out to mean showing up occasionally to criticize my choices and text constantly about urgent party questions that somehow always came when I was in the middle of important lab work. My boss Richard, 50M, was already annoyed with my divided attention because we were finalizing a massive grant proposal for coastal restoration work. Potentially career-defining research that could have secured funding for my projects for the next 5 years. The day before the party, I invited Janet to see the yacht decorations before the guests arrived. I thought she'd be impressed by the attention to detail, the custom photos, the marine-themed centerpieces that were elegant, not tacky. Instead, she walked onto the deck with Christy and her sister Ellen trailing behind, took one cold look around, and said, "Well, this certainly isn't what I would have chosen." I forced a smile. "Is there anything you'd like me to change?" "There's still time to dash," she cut me off with a dismissive wave. "Lucas mentioned you'd spent quite a lot on this event." "I suppose it's fine. Though I don't understand why there are so many of your work colleagues on the guest list." The truth was I'd invited some key research partners because they were potential donors for her favorite charity, which I thought she'd appreciate. "They're supporting your conservation foundation," I explained. "Plus, they're excited to meet you." Janet's face did this thing where it freezes in a smile while her eyes go completely cold. This is supposed to be a family celebration, Haley. But I suppose you wouldn't understand family traditions coming from such a small family yourself. My parents died in a car accident when I was in college. She knew this. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, but pushed through. Actually, the captain needs to go over a few safety things before tomorrow. Would you like to hear about the menu? The chef has prepared Christy tells me you didn't get the salmon I prefer, she interrupted. Christy had specifically told me Janet was allergic to salmon now. I was about to defend myself when Janet turned to the yacht coordinator and said, "This is what happens when you let non-family plan important events." My son should have known better. Something in me snapped. 8 months of forced smiles and swallowed comments broke loose. I am family. I've been married to Lucas for 2 years. She laughed, actually laughed, and looked at her sister and niece. Oh honey, marriage certificates are just paper. Family is blood. Then she turned to me with this fake sympathetic look. You're just the current wife. Lucas has always had a weakness for strays. The yacht coordinator looked horrified, Christy was smirking, and I felt like I'd been slapped. I'd spent thousands of dollars, countless hours, missed critical research deadlines, for this woman who couldn't even pretend to be civil. You know what? The party's canceled, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Enjoy your birthday without me. Janet's eyes widened. You can't cancel. The invitations, the deposits watch me. I turned to the coordinator. The event is still on, but the guest list has changed. I'll email you the details. I walked off the yacht shaking with adrenaline and rage. I called Lucas immediately, crying through hiccuping breaths as I explained what happened. To his credit, he didn't hesitate. Cancel whatever you need to. We'll figure it out. That night, we transformed the entire event. I called my colleagues, friends, and a few of Lucas's business partners who I actually liked. The next day, while Janet was presumably waiting for Lucas to fix things with me, we hosted a networking event for marine conservation on that same yacht. Lucas made connections that would later prove vital for his business. I introduced potential donors to our research projects, and nobody once commented on my unusual enthusiasm for kelp forests. Naturally, all hell broke loose afterward. Janet called Lucas screaming about humiliation and betrayal. His sister threatened to never speak to him again, if only. Christy posted passive-aggressive Instagram stories about fake people with ocean emojis. But the most shocking thing happened that night after we returned home from our reconstituted party. Lucas sat on our bed, loosening his tie, and said, "I'm cutting them off. Financially, I mean." I nearly dropped my earrings. What? I'm done. Hey, what Mom did to you? It's just the latest in a lifetime of manipulation. They've been living off me since Dad died, and I've let them because of guilt. But seeing how they treat you? That's my limit. That's when the whole story came out. How his mother had sabotaged every relationship he'd ever had, terrified someone would steal her meal ticket. How they drained his inheritance before he could even grieve his father. How his business success had only made them more demanding, not less. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, stunned. He looked ashamed. I thought I could manage it. Keep them satisfied with money while building our life separately. I was wrong. They'll never be satisfied. The next day, Lucas called his mother and explained that the monthly family support payments were ending. She could keep the house, but the credit cards, shopping allowances, and random cash infusions were done. The screaming was so loud I could hear it from across the room. You're choosing that gold digger over your own mother? Gold digger. Me, who had spent my own savings on her birthday party. Me, who lived on ramen through grad school to avoid student loans. Me, who drove a 15-year-old Corolla while researching how to save our dying oceans. Lucas remained eerily calm. Mom, I'm choosing my wife and a healthy life. I'll always be your son, but this financial relationship isn't good for any of us. We thought that might be the end of it. We were catastrophically naive. 3 days later, Richard called me into his office. Haley, I've received some concerning emails about you. Someone had sent anonymous messages to our entire research board claiming I was falsifying data and sleeping with donors to secure funding. The emails included private photos from my Instagram of Lucas and me on our yacht party, twisted to look like we were misusing research funds for personal luxury. The timing for our grant application couldn't have been worse. I was devastated but not surprised when I traced the IP address back to Christie's apartment. Lucas was furious, immediately hiring lawyers and threatening defamation suits. But the damage was harder to undo than we expected. Science depends on reputation. Whispers of impropriety, even when disproven, leave lingering doubts. Then the family showed up at my lab. All of them: Janet, her sister, Christy, Lucas's sister, and her husband. They created such a scene that security was called. They demanded to speak to Lucas alone, without her influence. When I refused to call him and asked them to leave, Janet loudly announced to my entire lab that I was a cheating gold digger who had manipulated her son and stolen family money. My colleagues tried to look busy, but I could see them absorbing every word. Project samples I'd spent months collecting sat neglected as this circus played out. When security finally arrived, Janet pointed at me and said, "Remember who funds this building before you decide who to throw out." Lucas arrived just as they were being escorted out. The look of absolute devastation on his face broke my heart. We barely spoke that night, not from anger but exhaustion. This wasn't just emotional terrorism anymore. They were actively trying to destroy both our careers. The next attack was more calculated. Lucas received legal notices claiming he had misappropriated family business funds to start his company. It was completely false. He'd built everything from scratch after his father's business had already collapsed, but the allegations triggered an audit that temporarily froze some of his business accounts. Meanwhile, someone accidentally deleted crucial research data from our lab servers. Backups existed, thank God, but we lost weeks of work restoring everything. I couldn't prove it was them, but the timing was suspicious, especially after Christy had been asking weirdly specific questions about my work schedule. By this point, I was barely sleeping, jumping at every email notification, and spending more time doing damage control than actual research. Lucas was working double time to reassure clients the legal issues were baseless. We were both running on empty. The annual Ocean Conservation Gala couldn't have come at a worse time, but as a lead researcher, I was expected to attend. It was being held at the Coastal Institute where potential funders would be evaluating presentations for the next grant cycle, including mine. Lucas insisted on accompanying me, partly for support and partly because we were both afraid to let the other out of sight. We were making small talk with the Institute's director when I saw them enter. Janet, Christy, and Ellen, dressed to the nines. My blood ran cold. "Lucas, your family is here." His head snapped up. What the F dash, but it was too late. Janet was gliding toward us, air-kissing the director. "Richard, so wonderful to see you again. We've donated to the Institute for years, you know." They had not. Richard looked confused but professional. "Mrs. Mercer, I don't believe we've had the pleasure." "Oh, we haven't met in person, but I've followed your work through my daughter-in-law." She placed a hand on my arm like we were dear friends. "Haley's research has been a family passion since she joined our little clan." I felt physically ill. What happened next still seemed surreal. Janet maneuvered expertly through the crowd, introducing herself to key funders, hinting at insider knowledge of the research projects. When she cornered the head of the grant committee, I heard her stage whisper, "Between us, there are some concerns about data integrity in the coastal restoration project." Such a shame when promising young scientists cut corners. Lucas had been watching this systematic destruction of my credibility with growing tension. I could see a muscle twitching in his jaw, a rare sign he was about to lose his carefully maintained composure. When Janet began showing someone photos on her phone, gesturing in my direction, he disappeared briefly, returning with his laptop. "Excuse me," he said, voice carrying across the room as he stepped onto the small stage used for presentations. "I apologize for interrupting, but there's something that needs to be addressed." The room quieted as Lucas connected his computer to the projector. Janet looked alarmed. "Some of you know me as Haley's husband, others through my environmental consultancy." But tonight, I need to speak as someone who values scientific integrity and truth. He clicked a button, and financial records appeared on screen. These are the financial contributions from my business to my family members over the past 8 years. The numbers were staggering, hundreds of thousands of dollars in family support. For years, I've supported my family out of love and obligation. Recently, when I decided to end this financial dependence, they responded by attempting to destroy both my wife's research career and my business through false allegations. He clicked again, showing the defamatory emails sent to my research board alongside proof they came from his cousin's accounts. Another click revealed the legal notices with an official letter from his lawyer confirming they were baseless. The people who claim to love me have been systematically attacking the most important person in my life, a dedicated scientist whose work could help save our coastal ecosystems, because they're afraid of losing their meal ticket. Janet was frantically trying to reach the stage, but Richard and security blocked her path. So to anyone who's heard whispers questioning Dr. Haley Mercer's integrity or research, now you know the source and motivation. And Mom? He looked directly at Janet. This is the last time your actions will impact either of our careers. The silence after he finished was deafening. Then Richard stepped forward. Thank you for your transparency, Mr. Mercer. Perhaps this is a good moment to announce that Dr. Mercer's coastal restoration grant has been unanimously approved by the board as of this afternoon. I didn't know, hadn't checked my email during the chaos of getting ready. Tears of relief streamed down my face as applause broke out. Through blurry eyes, I saw Janet, Christy, and Ellen being escorted out, Janet's face twisted with rage. Later that night, after endless congratulations and expressions of support, Lucas and I sat exhausted in our car. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have protected you from them from the beginning. And I should have listened when you warned me they wouldn't change, I admitted. We both wanted to believe in family. The aftermath wasn't neat or quick. Lucas's mother attempted further legal actions, all of which failed but drained our time and energy. Some family members chose sides, others withdrew completely. The grant money came through, but working in the lab still carried whispers and sidelong glances for months. 3 weeks ago, we made a decision. I submitted a proposal to conduct my research from the Institute's vessel instead of the mainland lab. Lucas arranged to manage his consultancy remotely. We packed up, sublet our apartment, and moved onto this research ship. As I sit here listening to the ocean slap against the hull, I feel both profound loss and strange relief. I lost the fantasy of a loving, extended family, but gained an unshakable partnership with the one person who chose me above everything. Lucas lost his remaining family connections, but found freedom from decades of emotional blackmail. Tomorrow we'll wake up to endless horizon instead of waiting for the next attack. My research is already showing promising results away from the constant stress. Lucas has signed 2 new clients who appreciate his remote working arrangement. We're adrift, but anchored to each other. Maybe that's really what family is supposed to be.